For years, he waited, rain or shine, frost or blazing sun, loyal paws pressed against the dirt, eyes scanning the horizon for a return that never came. Every passerby wondered why the dog remained in that one lonely spot, a living monument to memory, hope, and devotion. Then, one quiet evening, a familiar whisper broke the silence. And everything changed. The air was crisp that morning, carrying the faint scent of dew and pine from the nearby forest. A gentle wind rustled through the scattered leaves on the ground, whispering secrets of the past to anyone who would listen. At the edge of the dirt path that wound around the abandoned farmhouse, the dog waited. His coat was flecked with gray now, evidence of years past, yet his posture remained vigilant, every muscle taut with anticipation. Time had not dulled his senses, if anything, it had sharpened them, honing a patience few could ever comprehend. Neighbors had long stopped asking why he stayed there. Children would sometimes wander by, laughing as they ran past the old fence, trying to coax him to play, only to be met with a calm, unwavering stare. The dog's eyes, deep pools of amber and wisdom, followed the horizon, and for those who noticed, it was as if he were peering into a place far beyond the visible, searching for someone or something that had been absent for years. People speculated. Perhaps he had been abandoned and refused to leave, or maybe he had lost a companion and waited for their return. The truth was far more profound, though few could guess it. The dog had known her once, a presence that had left an indelible mark on his memory. Even after the years stretched endlessly, he remembered every scent, every sound, every subtle gesture she had made that had once filled his world with warmth. The farm around him was silent now, worn by time and neglect. Broken windows reflected the soft morning light, and the fence he had once bounded along with joyous abandon now creaked in the wind. Vines crawled across the wooden boards, weaving a tapestry of green over the weathered planks. But the dog did not see decay or abandonment. In his mind, this place was alive with memories, and in those memories, she had never left. As the sun began to rise, casting long shadows across the dirt path, the dog's ears twitched. A distant rustling in the forest drew his attention, and his body tensed, muscles coiling like springs. The years of waiting had not made him complacent, every sound, every shift in the wind, could signify her return. He rose from his spot, shaking out his long fur, alert and ready, his paws leaving subtle impressions in the soft earth. Minutes passed like hours, but he remained steadfast. Occasionally, someone would pass by, offering a word, a glance, a piece of food, and he would acknowledge them with a slow, deliberate nod of his head. Yet, as soon as they moved on, his gaze returned to the horizon, unwavering. It was a devotion that transcended time, a patience that defied logic, and a loyalty that no stranger could ever truly understand. In the village nearby, whispers of his vigil had grown into a story. Old Mrs. Callahan, who had lived there since before the farmhouse had fallen into disrepair, told the children, "That dog waits for someone who'll never come back. But still, he waits. That's the kind of heart that doesn't break." The children didn't fully grasp her words, but they felt the weight of them, and in their games, they sometimes left small offerings, bits of bread, scraps of meat, a worn toy they hoped would comfort him. The dog accepted these gifts without indulgence, almost as if acknowledging the kindness but remaining tethered to something far greater than simple gratitude. Time passed in its relentless rhythm. Seasons changed, the golden warmth of autumn leaves, the crystalline chill of winter frost, the fresh bloom of spring, but the dog never moved from his spot. Occasionally, the wind carried the faint echoes of voices, laughter, or distant music from the village, and he would tilt his head, nostrils flaring, seeking a scent that might guide him. Yet none ever came close enough. Still, he waited. One particular morning, a storm rolled over the horizon. Dark clouds swallowed the sky, and the first drops of rain began to fall, light at first, then heavier, drumming against the earth and his back. He did not flinch. The world around him blurred into gray, and the wind howled with a power that seemed intent on testing his resolve. He pressed his paws into the mud, feeling the wetness soak through his fur, but he remained steadfast. No storm, no passage of years, no sorrow could move him from his post. And then, a sound, so faint it could have been imagined, yet unmistakable. A whisper, carried on the wind, soft, fragile, like a thread connecting the past to the present. The dog froze. Every fiber of his being strained to catch it again. His ears pricked, tail stiffened, and he sniffed the air, nostrils flaring. There it was, the scent of her, subtle but unmistakable, intertwined with the earth and the rain, a familiar warmth that no other could ever replicate. His heart, long accustomed to the ache of waiting, leapt. The dog's eyes, reflecting the storm-darkened sky, glimmered with a renewed intensity. He did not bark, did not move impulsively. Years had taught him restraint, precision, and patience. Instead, he crouched low, muscles coiled, senses heightened, ready for the moment that might finally bridge the gap between memory and reality. Somewhere beyond the trees, beyond the veil of rain and storm, she was coming. And he would not, could not, let her go again. The rain had grown heavier, pattering against the skeletal remains of the farmhouse and turning the dirt path into a slick, muddy trail. The dog's paws sank slightly into the softened earth, leaving behind a trail of paw prints that would soon be washed away by the relentless downpour. Yet he paid them no mind. His focus was fixed, unwavering, trained on a single point beyond the horizon where the first hints of movement had emerged. Hours, or perhaps minutes, it was impossible to tell in the suspended tension of waiting, passed in silence broken only by the winds whistling through the gnarled branches. The dog's ears twitched at every faint noise. The distant caw of a crow, the snap of a branch under a wandering fox's paw, the muffled drumming of water against distant rooftops. But none of it distracted him. All of it merely sharpened his senses. He was a sentinel, a guardian of memory and hope, a creature whose very essence had been shaped by the years of patient waiting for her return. The villagers had long ceased to interfere. They had learned that coaxing him to leave his post was pointless. Even when children tried to lure him with toys, treats, or gentle calls, he would rise, lift a paw, and then return to the precise spot where he had waited for years. People began to see him as a symbol rather than a pet, a representation of unwavering loyalty, an embodiment of devotion that transcended logic and reason. Some would leave scraps of food or water at a respectful distance, whispering blessings for the unknown woman he waited for, hoping she would arrive to fulfill the years of silent vigil. Yet the dog's patience was not blind. Every gesture, every offering, every passerby was measured, acknowledged, and then set aside. He had learned to discern the trivial from the significant. Years of experience had honed his instincts into a razor-sharp edge. When she came, he would know immediately. He would know by the scent, the rhythm of her footsteps, the faint timbre of her voice, and the energy she carried with her. The storm intensified. Rain sluiced down in heavy sheets, hammering the ground with a deafening rhythm. Lightning split the sky with jagged precision, illuminating the scene in stark white flashes. The dog flinched, yet never moved from his vigil. The years had made him resilient, tempered by hardship and endurance. Thunder rolled across the valley, shaking the air, but still he stayed, eyes locked on the faint shimmer of movement that had caught his attention earlier. Inside the farmhouse, shadows flickered across broken walls, twisted remnants of furniture, and shattered glass. No one had lived here for years. It was a hollow shell of what had once been a home. And yet, in the midst of ruin, memories lingered. The dog's mind was alive with them, the laughter of a young girl, the soft murmurs of a woman, the way sunlight used to spill across the wooden floors and illuminate her hair in golden strands. Each memory was a thread, weaving together a tapestry of devotion that had held him to this place through countless seasons. The whisper came again. Softer this time, carried on the wind with a clarity that made the dog's ears pivot sharply forward. He could hear it, subtle as it was, like a delicate chord plucked on a distant instrument. His heart pounded, not with fear, but with recognition, with understanding. The scent mingled with the whisper, a delicate perfume of familiarity, bringing with it the promise of reunion that had been deferred for so long. He rose, muscles coiled, moving with deliberate precision along the wet path. Mud squelched beneath his paws as he advanced, nose to the ground, catching every nuance of the air. There it was again, the faint scent of her, entwined with the crisp scent of rain-soaked earth, guiding him forward. Each step was careful, measured, a combination of instinct, memory, and anticipation. The storm had become a backdrop to a ritual that had endured longer than many human lifetimes, a testament to the bond that time and distance could not sever. The villagers watched from a distance, their umbrellas shielding them from the rain. Eyes wide with awe, they saw the dog move with purpose, following an unseen thread that only he could perceive. They whispered among themselves, exchanging stories of his vigil, of the years he had waited, of the faith that had never wavered. None of them spoke of doubt, there was no doubt in his devotion. To doubt would have been to misunderstand the magnitude of what they witnessed, the purest form of loyalty imaginable. The storm showed no mercy. Gusts of wind whipped through the trees, bending them almost to the ground. Leaves and debris spun through the air, crashing against the farmhouse walls. Water pooled in the ruts of the dirt path, but still the dog pressed forward, undeterred. His fur was plastered to his frame, soaked through, but he did not shake, did not retreat. Every fiber of his being was focused on a singular goal, to find her, wherever she might be, and to remain steadfast by her side. Then, amid the cacophony of storm and wind, a figure emerged. It was indistinct at first, a shadow among shadows, but the dog recognized the movement instantly. His tail twitched, ears pricked, muscles taut. The years of waiting, the seasons of solitude, the countless days of longing, all converged in this moment. He advanced cautiously, every step controlled, eyes never leaving the approaching form. The figure halted, sensing the presence of the dog before fully revealing herself. A whisper, barely audible over the storm, floated through the air, "I've found you. I've finally found you." The dog froze, nostrils flaring, eyes glistening with a complex mix of anticipation and recognition. Years of patience had brought him to this very instant. Every raindrop, every gust of wind, every lonely night spent waiting had led to this reunion. And still, he did not move recklessly. He approached her slowly, methodically, every step an acknowledgement of the bond that had endured all trials. It was a moment suspended in time, a tableau of devotion and love, painted against the backdrop of the storm. The villagers held their breath, witnessing a miracle of loyalty, a living testament to the unbreakable connection between human and animal, a bond that even the relentless passage of years could not erode. The first few steps brought him closer, each paw sinking slightly into the sodden earth, leaving behind a trail that glistened in the intermittent flashes of lightning. The wind howled, carrying with it the scent of wet soil, splintered wood, and something unmistakably familiar, her perfume, faint but unmistakable, layered with the earthy aroma of rain. The dog's heart raced, not from fear, but from the overwhelming recognition that after years of patient waiting, the moment he had been waiting for had arrived. The figure ahead of him shivered in the storm, her frame frail against the fury of the elements, yet she held herself with quiet determination. Every instinct in the dog screamed at him to move faster, to close the distance, to leap into her embrace. But years of discipline, years of guarding and waiting, had taught him control. He advanced slowly, deliberately, ensuring each movement was purposeful. His amber eyes never wavered from hers, reading her posture, her rhythm, every subtle nuance that communicated she was the one. The villagers who had gathered at a safe distance whispered among themselves, their voices muted by the roar of the storm. Some covered their mouths with gloved hands, unable to contain their awe. He's been waiting all these years," one woman murmured, her voice trembling with emotion. Another man nodded, his eyes glistening. No other dog would have done this. Only the truest of companions. Inside the farmhouse, shadows danced across broken walls and shattered windows, remnants of a life once lived. The rain poured through the gaping holes in the roof, drenching the remains of furniture and belongings, but it could not wash away the memory that lingered there. This place, long abandoned, had been a refuge, a sanctuary, and now, it was the stage for a reunion that transcended time. The dog paused momentarily, nose quivering as he sniffed the air. A subtle sound reached his ears, a whisper, faint and broken by the wind, yet carried with clarity. Over here. His muscles tensed, every sense alert. He advanced, each step meticulous, navigating the uneven terrain, the puddles, the broken boards that littered the path. Each movement was calculated, born from a combination of instinct, memory, and the relentless training that had kept him vigilant through countless storms, both literal and metaphorical. The woman's eyes widened as she saw the dog approach. Recognition and relief mingled on her face, tears streaking through rain-soaked cheeks. She knelt slightly, extending her hand in a tentative gesture, almost as if afraid that this was a dream that could shatter with a single misstep. The dog stopped just a few feet away, tilting his head, studying her, reading her intent, confirming that the years of waiting had not been in vain. Lightning split the sky again, illuminating every detail of the scene. The wet fur plastered against the dog's muscular frame, the rain cascading down her shoulders, the muddy path leading to their eventual meeting. The storm roared around them, but for a brief moment, the world contracted into a single point, the unwavering gaze of the dog and the trembling figure of the woman who had returned. He stepped closer, nose leading, ears pricked, tail stiff but not wagging, yet the tension in his body betrayed a mixture of excitement and solemnity. This was the culmination of years of vigilance, a moment where patience, loyalty, and hope converged. His paw fell into a puddle, splashing water over the edge, but he paid it no mind. Only she mattered, only this reunion. The villagers, frozen in their observation, held their collective breath. They had heard tales, whispers of a dog who had waited for years, who had refused to leave a single spot, who had defied hunger, weather, and time itself. But seeing it in person was something entirely different. The raw power of devotion, the depth of connection that bridged species and years, left them speechless. Mothers pulled children close, men removed hats in respect, and some wept quietly, overwhelmed by the emotional gravity of what they were witnessing. The woman finally spoke, her voice barely audible over the storm. I never thought I'd find you here." Her hands shook as she reached out, fingertips brushing against the dog's wet fur. He didn't flinch. He leaned forward slightly, pressing the side of his muzzle into her palm, testing, confirming, acknowledging. It was a ritual of recognition, a moment both fragile and monumental. Memories flooded the dog's mind, the times she had called him, trained him, walked him through the fields, whispered secrets into his ears. Every moment replayed in perfect clarity, a montage of shared experiences that cemented their bond. And now, standing in the tempest, soaked to the bone but undeterred, he knew with certainty that every moment of waiting, every sacrifice of comfort and safety, had led to this. The storm began to relent slightly, a lull in its fury, as if granting them a brief window of peace. The wind still moaned through the broken trees, the rain still fell in relentless sheets, but there was a softness in the air, an almost tangible acknowledgement that the reunion had arrived. The dog pressed closer, finally allowing her to guide him forward. Mud splashed against both of them, but neither cared. They moved together, steps synchronized, a dance learned through years of unspoken understanding. Every glance, every subtle shift in weight, communicated trust and recognition. Years of separation melted away in the warmth of their shared presence, in the silent promise that neither would leave the other's side again. As they reached the farmhouse doorway, the woman whispered again, almost to herself, almost to the dog, "You waited, all this time, and never gave up on me." The dog responded with a gentle nudge, resting his head against her chest, his amber eyes reflecting the storm-lit sky, full of loyalty, relief, and unwavering devotion. The moment they crossed the threshold of the ruined farmhouse, the storm outside seemed to retreat slightly, as though yielding to the quiet intensity of the reunion within. Water dripped from the broken roof, pooling on the warped wooden floorboards, but it was a trivial detail compared to the weight of the moment. The dog, ever alert, scanned the interior cautiously, every sense attuned to potential dangers, yet his trust in her presence allowed a small relaxation of his muscles, a brief release from the tension that had defined years of waiting. The woman's hands trembled as she helped him navigate the treacherous floor. Splintered boards, broken furniture, and puddles created a chaotic maze, but the dog's coordination was flawless. Each pawfall was deliberate, silent, almost reverent, as if he understood the sacredness of this space where past and present collided. She whispered words of encouragement, a gentle stream of reassurance, and he responded with subtle gestures, a tilt of the head, a shift of his weight, a soft, low growl that conveyed alertness without aggression. Memories of the past began to surface vividly, haunting the corners of the farmhouse. The echoes of laughter long gone, the smell of meals prepared in hurried evenings, the faint creak of the staircase they had once climbed together, all these sensations swirled around them. The dog paused near a shattered chair, sniffing the damp cushions, as if confirming that the essence of her presence had indeed returned. The years had passed, but some things, like their bond, were immutable, unyielding to the passage of time. Outside, the storm still raged, but the sound was muted, filtered through the walls and roof of the old structure. Rain drummed a relentless rhythm on the remaining shingles, and the wind howled through the gaps with a ghostly persistence. Yet inside, there was a fragile sanctuary, a bubble of intimacy amidst chaos, where neither past trauma nor present danger could intrude. She guided him further into the room, pointing toward the cellar door partially concealed under a tattered rug. He's down there," she whispered, her voice barely audible. The dog stiffened immediately, nose twitching, ears pricked, tail lowered but rigid. Years of training and intuition sharpened by loyalty and patience kicked in instantly. The cellar had been a place of uncertainty, a confined space that could hide danger. Yet he understood implicitly that his mission was clear: protect, investigate, and ensure her safety above all else. The woman fumbled with the ancient latch on the cellar door. Her fingers were soaked, and the wood was slick from the persistent rain, making the task difficult. The dog's amber eyes never left her hands, every muscle coiled in anticipation, ready to spring into action if needed. A soft, fearful noise emanated from below, a whisper, a shuffle, and a muffled sound of distress. The dog's ears flattened slightly, signaling recognition of the human distress, yet restraint held him back momentarily, a testament to the discipline and training that had governed every aspect of his life. The cellar door creaked open slowly, revealing the dark, damp interior below. The smell hit immediately: mold, wet earth, and something faintly metallic that set his instincts on edge. He descended carefully, claws clicking softly on the worn wooden stairs, every movement measured, silent. The woman followed, gripping his fur lightly for guidance, a tether of trust linking them together. At the bottom of the stairs, the dog paused, ears twitching, nose working overtime. The faint sound of sobbing reached him, a human voice, fragile and desperate. There, huddled in a corner, was a young boy, his clothes torn, face streaked with dirt and tears, eyes wide with fear. The dog approached cautiously, low growl vibrating in his chest, and then, with a deliberate gentleness, nudged the boy's shoulder with his nose. Recognition flashed across the boy's face. You're here," he stammered, relief mingling with disbelief. The woman knelt beside the boy, wrapping her arms around him, whispering soothing words. The dog circled them protectively, his stance broad, muscles tense, eyes scanning the shadows for any threat. This had been his mission for years: to protect, to guard, to ensure that no harm came to those entrusted to him. And now, the culmination of all those years of vigilance had arrived. Above, the storm continued its relentless battering, but below, in that cramped, shadowed cellar, a fragile peace took hold. The dog's body pressed lightly against the boy, a reassuring presence that communicated safety and steadfastness without words. Every subtle gesture, the tilt of his head, the gentle paw against the boy's leg, the steady gaze, spoke volumes. Time seemed to slow. The rain outside blurred into a continuous, soothing background hum, punctuated by occasional cracks of distant thunder. The woman's whispered reassurances blended with the boy's soft sobs and the dog's calm presence, creating a rhythm that was almost meditative, a temporary reprieve from the storm and the years of separation that had preceded this moment. The dog finally stepped back slightly, allowing the woman to take the lead, yet his eyes never left her or the boy. Every nerve remained alert, ready to react to the slightest threat, but trust had been re-established, a delicate truce forged in years of anticipation. The cellar, once a place of fear and uncertainty, had transformed into a sanctuary of reunion, courage, and unwavering loyalty. As they prepared to ascend, the dog led the way, ensuring every step was safe. His tail, previously tense, now relaxed slightly, signaling a temporary, cautious relief. The woman glanced at him, gratitude and awe mixing in her gaze. I didn't think he'd wait, after all this time," she murmured, voice barely audible. The dog simply nudged her hand with his muzzle, a silent acknowledgement of the bond that had endured through years of absence, storms, and uncertainty. Every creak of the staircase, every shadow cast by flickering light, was a reminder that danger had not fully passed. Yet in that moment, the dog's presence transformed fear into courage, despair into hope, and isolation into reunion. The moment they reached the bottom of the cellar stairs, the atmosphere felt heavier, thick with a mixture of damp air, fear, and years of unspoken tension. The boy huddled against the far corner wall, his small body shaking uncontrollably. He looked up at the dog with wide, watery eyes, unsure if this apparition of fur and loyalty was real or just a figment of hope. The dog, sensing his uncertainty, lowered his body slightly, pressing a paw gently against the boy's trembling hand. The gesture was soft, deliberate, an unspoken promise that he would not leave, that no harm would come while he was here. The woman knelt beside the boy, smoothing his hair back from his face. "It's okay, you're safe now," she whispered. Her voice was gentle but firm, attempting to anchor him in reality despite the chaos around them. Rainwater dripped from the broken roof above, pattering on the wooden floor and running into small puddles that reflected the dim light filtering through cracks in the walls. The smell of wet earth, mold, and old wood filled the air, mingling with a faint metallic tang that hinted at the building's long neglect. The dog circled them carefully, his ears pricked and nostrils flaring as he assessed the space. Every shadow, every corner, was scanned with meticulous attention. Years of training had honed his senses to perfection. He could hear the faintest scrape of movement, smell the slightest hint of danger, and detect the smallest changes in body language. And yet, despite his hyper-awareness, he trusted the woman implicitly. She was the signal, the anchor, the guide through the uncertainties of the world outside and the storm raging beyond the walls. Suddenly, the boy's voice broke the fragile calm. I heard them coming," he stammered, eyes darting toward the shadows. They were angry," they said. His words trailed off, choked by tears and fear. The dog immediately stiffened, growl low and resonant in his chest, warning of an unseen threat. The woman placed a reassuring hand on his back. "Shoo, it's okay. They can't hurt you now," she said, but even her own voice betrayed a hint of doubt. The storm outside mirrored the turmoil within, the sound of the wind rattling the remaining roof panels, the relentless drumming of rain, and the occasional crack of thunder made the cellar feel both protective and vulnerable at once. The dog stepped closer to the boy, placing his body between the child and the darkest corner of the room. His amber eyes glowed faintly in the dim light, reflecting a fierce determination. The boy reached out tentatively, brushing a hand along the dog's thick fur. The sensation was grounding, almost magical in its ability to calm. Years of fear, abandonment, and uncertainty seemed to loosen their grip, if only slightly. Who did this to me?" the boy whispered, voice trembling. The woman's eyes met his, filled with empathy and sorrow. "There are people who've done terrible things, but you're safe now," she said. Her words were true, but the history of the place and the memories lingering in the shadows told a story far darker than she could reveal at that moment. The dog's ears twitched at the boy's question, picking up nuances in tone and fear that humans often missed. He could sense the weight of trauma pressing down on the small figure before him, and he understood that protection wasn't just physical, it was emotional, psychological, even spiritual. For the next several minutes, they remained in a careful stillness. The dog's body was tense but patient, responding to the boy's gradual attempt to regain composure. The woman spoke softly, telling him stories of courage, of resilience, of the importance of trust and hope. Each word, each sentence, seemed to chip away at the fear that had solidified over years of neglect and abuse. The storm outside continued unabated, but within this small, dimly lit cellar, a fragile warmth began to emerge. The woman's gaze drifted toward the cellar stairs. "We need to get you out of here," she said, her tone gentle but insistent. The dog responded immediately, positioning himself near the boy, ready to guide and shield him as they ascended. Every step upward would be dangerous, the floorboards were slick with water, and broken beams threatened to give way under the slightest pressure. But the dog's confidence was unwavering, and his presence imbued the boy with a courage he didn't know he had. As they climbed the stairs, the dog's paws made soft clicking sounds against the wet wood. He paused at each step, ensuring that the boy and woman followed safely. The woman whispered continuous reassurances, her words forming a bridge of safety and trust between the past horrors of the cellar and the uncertain world above. The boy clung to her side, eyes wide, heart racing, yet feeling an unfamiliar sense of security in the dog's unwavering vigilance. Finally, they reached the top of the stairs. The storm outside raged with even more intensity, but the immediate danger of the cellar had passed. The dog stepped onto the wooden floor of the main room, water dripping from his fur, eyes scanning the perimeter for threats. The woman turned to the boy, wrapping her arms around him in a protective embrace. "We're here now. We're safe," she whispered, though the words felt fragile against the howl of the wind and the relentless rain. The dog stood close, head slightly lowered, watching both the boy and the woman. His loyalty, honed through years of waiting and vigilance, had been vindicated. He had protected, guided, and reassured, and now the reunion was complete. The cellar, once a place of terror, had become a crucible of courage and trust, and the bond between human and dog had never been stronger. The storm's fury outside was relentless, rain thrashing against the remaining roof panels, wind howling through the broken windows, shaking the fragile structure as though it might collapse at any moment. Yet inside the room, a strange calm had begun to settle. The boy, still clinging to the woman, began to feel the first hints of safety since his life had been upended. He could feel the dog's warmth beside him, the steady rhythm of his breathing, and the quiet assurance in his eyes. That presence alone was enough to anchor him, a living shield against both the elements and the memories that haunted him. The woman, noticing the boy's hesitation, crouched down to his level. "You're safe," she said again, more firmly this time. "I promise, nothing can hurt you while he's here." Her words were accompanied by a gentle pat on the dog's shoulder, as if acknowledging the silent partnership between canine and human. The dog's ears twitched in recognition, and he nudged the boy gently with his muzzle, encouraging him to take small, careful steps. The boy's tiny hand moved to the dog's fur, brushing it tentatively, finding a texture that was both familiar and grounding, the coarse yet comforting feel of the shepherd's coat. For a few moments, the three of them remained huddled together, listening to the storm outside, feeling its power, yet refusing to be overwhelmed by it. The dog shifted slightly, scanning the room for any signs of lingering danger, his amber eyes catching every shadow, every flicker of movement. Years of training had sharpened his instincts beyond the capabilities of most humans. He could sense the slightest change in the air, detect the faintest scent, and hear whispers that would escape human ears. Every instinct screamed that vigilance was necessary, yet he remained calm, focused, and unwavering, projecting his strength and confidence onto the boy and the woman. The boy finally spoke, his voice small and tentative. I was alone, he said, eyes flicking toward the far corner of the room where the cellar steps had been. His voice cracked, and he swallowed hard. I didn't think anyone would come. I thought I'd be here forever. Tears streamed down his face, mingling with the rainwater that had seeped into his clothes. The woman wrapped an arm around him, pulling him close. You're not alone anymore, she whispered. He's here, and we're going to make sure nothing ever hurts you again. The dog shifted closer, resting his head on the boy's lap, his presence both protective and comforting. The boy tentatively reached out, stroking the dog's head, and for the first time in years, allowed himself to breathe without fear. The connection was immediate and profound. The dog had waited, watched, and now, finally, the boy understood the depth of that loyalty. The bond formed in the moments of danger, reinforced by years of patient waiting, created an unspoken promise that would never be broken. Outside, the storm intensified. Lightning split the sky, illuminating the room in stark, white flashes, each followed by a resounding thunderclap that shook the walls and sent a shiver down the spine of anyone present. The woman's gaze followed the lightning streaks, calculating their intensity and duration. We need to move, she said softly, her voice measured but urgent. There's a place nearby where we can wait safely until this passes. She stood, extending her hand to the boy. He hesitated, glancing at the dog. The shepherd's eyes met his, steady and reassuring. The boy nodded, taking the woman's hand, and the dog moved to the forefront, leading the way. Navigating through the damaged house was treacherous. Broken beams, puddles, and slippery surfaces made every step precarious. Yet the dog moved with a careful precision, his paws making soft but deliberate contact with the wet surfaces, guiding the boy and woman around obstacles with an almost supernatural awareness. The boy followed closely, trusting the dog implicitly, while the woman kept a steady hand on his back, ensuring he did not stumble. Each room they passed through bore the marks of years of neglect, peeling wallpaper, broken furniture, scattered debris, but the presence of the dog transformed the space from a place of fear into a path of hope and safety. They finally reached the front door, the storm outside battering them with wind and rain, yet the dog hesitated only briefly before stepping forward. His body was tense, ready to react to any immediate threat, but his trust in the woman and the boy was evident. The boy's small hand tightened around hers, and together they stepped outside, the cold rain soaking through their clothes. The wind tugged at their hair and jackets, but the dog remained steadfast, moving confidently ahead, guiding them toward a nearby structure that offered shelter, a small, weatherproof shed on the edge of the property. Inside the shed, dry for the most part, they huddled together, listening to the storm's fury. The boy, now seated, leaned against the dog, drawing warmth and comfort from his body. The woman checked him carefully, making sure he was unharmed, while her mind raced with plans for what would come next. The storm would not last forever, but the trauma of the past years would take much longer to heal. The dog, sensing the lingering tension, stayed close, eyes never leaving the boy, ears alert to any sound beyond the walls of the shed. Time seemed to slow inside that small space. The storm outside became a distant roar, a background to the profound sense of safety that had settled over them. The boy's breathing gradually slowed, his hands no longer trembling as violently. The dog's steady presence, combined with the woman's calm reassurances, created a sanctuary within a sanctuary, a place where fear could be released, and trust could take root. Each moment reinforced the bond between them, a promise forged in the crucible of danger and solidified in the shared experience of survival. Hours passed. The storm showed signs of relenting, though the clouds remained heavy and dark. The woman finally spoke, her voice breaking the silence. "We'll get you home soon," she said, eyes meeting the boy's. "You've been through enough for one lifetime. But today, you're safe. And he'll never leave your side." The dog's ears twitched in acknowledgement, a silent affirmation of the promise. The boy's lips curved into a tentative smile, the first real expression of hope in years. As the storm began to fade into a drizzle, the three of them emerged from the shed. The world outside was wet and gray, but the danger had passed. The boy walked confidently, no longer dragging behind, while the dog led with unwavering vigilance. Each step was a testament to resilience, trust, and the unbreakable bond formed in the darkest of hours. The woman followed closely, ensuring the boy's safety, her heart swelling with relief and quiet pride at the courage both had displayed. The storm had finally begun to ease, but the world outside remained a chaotic blur of waterlogged trees, shattered shingles, and the relentless smell of damp earth. The boy clung to the woman's hand, each step hesitant but more confident than before, guided by the dog whose unwavering vigilance never faltered. Every puddle, every stray piece of debris, seemed like a miniature battlefield, yet the shepherd navigated each obstacle with a calm precision that belied the storm's lingering threat. The boy's heart, still racing from the adrenaline, gradually began to sync with the steady cadence of the dog's breathing, a rhythm that offered comfort and the silent assurance that they were no longer alone. They emerged from the ruined house and stepped into the backyard, a landscape transformed by the storm's wrath. The garden, once meticulously maintained, now bore the scars of chaos. Broken branches littered the ground, mud had turned the grass into a slick, treacherous carpet, and a half-collapsed shed leaned precariously to one side. Yet even amid the devastation, the dog's posture radiated calm control, as if silently promising that they could traverse this landscape safely. The boy, still gripping the woman's hand tightly, cast anxious glances at the wreckage, but the dog's confident steps encouraged him forward. Each paw placement was deliberate, his gaze sweeping the surroundings for potential threats or hazards. As they made their way through the debris-strewn yard, the woman's mind raced. She was acutely aware of the boy's trauma, the years he had spent hiding, surviving alone, and living in constant fear. His eyes, wide and searching, reflected the residual terror of those years, and she knew that patience, gentleness, and trust-building would be essential. She crouched down at one point, meeting his gaze. "You've been so brave," she whispered, her voice soft yet imbued with authority. "I know it's been hard, but you're safe now. He's here, and we'll make sure you're never alone again." The boy's lips quivered, a mix of relief and lingering fear surfacing. He looked at the dog, whose amber eyes met his with quiet intensity, conveying a level of understanding that words could never capture. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, the boy reached out, letting his fingers brush the dog's wet fur. The shepherd pressed his side against the boy's hand, a silent acknowledgement of the bond forming, and a subtle reinforcement of trust. The woman's heart swelled at the scene, two lives, once shattered, now beginning the painstaking process of healing, guided by a creature whose loyalty was absolute. They moved toward the edge of the property, where the remnants of a garden shed offered temporary shelter. The dog paused, sniffing the air, ears alert. A fallen branch groaned under the weight of trapped water, sending ripples through the puddles around it. The boy froze, anxiety spiking again, but the dog's calm demeanor reassured him. One careful step at a time, guided by the shepherd's movements, they navigated the treacherous terrain. The woman followed, steadying the boy whenever he wavered, reinforcing the rhythm of safety and caution. Inside the shed, water had pooled along the edges, but the interior was largely intact, providing a haven from the storm's lingering wrath. The boy collapsed onto the wooden floorboards, breathing heavily, and the dog curled around him protectively, creating a cocoon of warmth and security. The woman set down her bag, pulling out blankets to wrap around both the boy and the dog. The boy's hands trembled as he clutched the fabric, but the presence of the dog, lying so close, offered comfort he hadn't known in years. Time stretched as they waited, each passing moment reinforcing the sense of security the boy had long been denied. Outside, the storm's fury became a distant roar, replaced by the steady drip of water from the sagging roof and the occasional gust of wind rattling the walls. The woman took the opportunity to assess the boy's injuries and general condition. Minor scratches and bruises marred his skin, remnants of past struggles and the storm's chaos, but there were no serious injuries. She cleaned the cuts as best she could, her touch gentle, her movements deliberate to avoid startling him. The dog remained vigilant, ears constantly flicking to subtle sounds beyond the shed, branches snapping, distant thunders, the faint shuffle of debris against the wind. Every so often, he would glance at the boy, amber eyes locking with his, and the boy would respond with a tentative nod or a slight touch of his hand. The woman marveled at the silent communication, a language built on trust, loyalty, and shared experience. It was a reminder of the extraordinary bond that can exist between humans and animals, a connection forged not through words but through unwavering presence and protective instinct. Eventually, the boy's breathing steadied. His body relaxed slightly, allowing himself to absorb the reality that the danger had passed, for now. The woman used this moment to speak softly, reinforcing the sense of safety. "We'll get you somewhere dry and warm soon," she said. "He'll never leave your side. You can trust him. And you can trust me too." The boy's lips curled into a small, tentative smile. The dog nudged him gently with his muzzle, as if affirming the woman's words. The boy's hand moved to scratch behind the dog's ears, a small gesture of affection, a silent acknowledgement of the bond that had been cemented through fear, endurance, and mutual protection. The storm outside was gradually dying, but the lessons of resilience, trust, and vigilance would remain with them far longer. The boy had begun to understand that he was no longer alone, that the dog's patience over the years had been a promise of safety and unwavering loyalty. Each moment in the shed solidified the foundation for a new chapter in his life, one where fear could be replaced by trust, and isolation could be transformed into companionship. The woman watched quietly, noting every subtle sign of emotional release, every flicker of hope, and every gesture of tentative courage from the boy. Night fell, bringing with it an eerie quiet broken only by the occasional drip of water and the distant rumble of storm clouds retreating. The boy lay curled against the dog, the warmth of the fur a comforting shield against the cold. The woman sat nearby, watching over them both, ensuring their safety as the final remnants of the storm dissipated. The bond formed in those harrowing hours, strengthened by shared experience and silent understanding, had created a new dynamic, a triangle of trust, protection, and hope that would endure beyond the storm. Outside, the world was wet and battered, but within the shed, a fragile sense of peace had been established. The dog's unwavering vigilance, the woman's protective guidance, and the boy's emerging trust created a microcosm of security, a safe harbor in the midst of chaos. It was a testament to the power of loyalty, patience, and resilience, and the first steps toward a future unshackled by fear. The first rays of dawn began to pierce through the fractured clouds, casting muted streaks of pale light across the waterlogged landscape. The storm had passed, but the devastation it left behind was undeniable. Fallen branches, scattered debris, and pools of muddy water reflected the dim morning sun. The boy stirred awake, his head resting against the dog's thick fur, eyes blinking in the weak light. He had slept more peacefully than he had in years, lulled by the steady presence of the dog and the quiet assurance that he was no longer alone. Slowly, he sat up, brushing stray strands of wet hair from his face, and instinctively wrapped his small arms around the dog's neck. The shepherd remained calm, shifting slightly to nuzzle the boy's cheek with his wet nose. That single movement, a silent display of protection and empathy, spoke volumes. The boy whispered a quiet, almost inaudible, "Thank you," though it was unclear whether he addressed the dog, the woman, or the sheer relief of surviving the night. The woman watched from across the shed, noting the small but significant progress. The boy was beginning to trust not only the dog but also her, the shared guardianship slowly bridging the chasm of years of fear. Outside, the remnants of the neighborhood lay strewn with the aftermath of the storm. Roof shingles had been torn from houses, fences sagged under the weight of rain-soaked debris, and the faint scent of broken earth mingled with the air. The woman stepped carefully out of the shed first, scanning the area for hazards. Her eyes fell on the shattered remains of a wooden fence that had once enclosed the garden next door, now leaning precariously like a fallen sentinel. She gestured to the boy, and with the dog leading the way, they carefully navigated through the wreckage. Every step was measured, each movement deliberate, reflecting the caution instilled by the storm and the potential for unseen dangers beneath the mud and water. The dog led them past the worst of the debris, his nose to the ground, ears pricked, amber eyes alert. The boy clutched the woman's hand tightly, yet each step forward emboldened him, strengthened by the shepherd's unwavering guidance. They reached the edge of the property, where the muddy path led to a narrow wooden bridge over a small flooded creek. The bridge creaked underfoot, threatening to give way, but the dog crossed with confident assurance. The boy hesitated, fear and hesitation momentarily paralyzing him. "Trust him," the woman urged softly, her hand steady on his shoulder. "He knows the way." With a trembling breath, the boy followed, placing his foot carefully on the wet, slippery wood. The dog stopped at intervals, looking back, ensuring the boy's safety with every cautious step. The bond between them deepened in those moments, silent communication, unspoken reassurance, and the mutual understanding that they would face the world together. By the time they reached solid ground on the other side, a fragile sense of triumph had begun to settle over the trio. Beyond the bridge, the streets of the neighborhood were still littered with fallen branches and scattered belongings. The woman's eyes scanned for anyone else who might need assistance. Perhaps neighbors had been trapped, or pets stranded. The boy noticed her glances and whispered, Will we help them too?" The dog's ears twitched, and he gave a soft bark, a sound of affirmation that carried a strange, almost human intelligence. The boy smiled faintly, understanding the message without needing words. He realized that his protector, the dog, was not just a guardian for him but also a symbol of courage, a compass guiding them through chaos and toward safety. They continued walking through the neighborhood, stepping over broken fences and pools of rainwater. Occasionally, the dog would stop, sniffing the air, his body rigid and alert. Small animals, frightened by the storm, scurried across their path, and the boy flinched at every sudden movement. But each time, the dog reassured him with a calm presence, nudging him forward, a tactile promise that they could face any challenge together. By mid-morning, the woman led them to a small community center, one of the few buildings that had weathered the storm relatively intact. Volunteers were already arriving, bringing supplies, blankets, and food for those displaced by the tempest. The boy's eyes widened at the sight of organized chaos, people helping one another, laughter mingling with tears, a living reminder that humanity could endure even the most violent upheaval. The dog stayed by the boy's side, unwavering in vigilance, as if silently instructing him to take in the scene, to trust the safety and goodwill of others. Inside the center, they were greeted by a kind-faced coordinator, who offered food, water, and a warm place to rest. The woman spoke quickly, explaining the boy's situation, and the volunteers nodded, immediately understanding the urgency. The boy stayed close to the dog, tentatively stepping forward only when reassured by the steady, calm presence of his companion. He noticed other children in the center, some visibly traumatized by the storm, others simply frightened by displacement. The boy's instinct to shrink back began to dissipate, replaced by a cautious curiosity fueled by the dog's protective assurance. Throughout the day, the boy learned to navigate a world beyond his previous confines, each moment mediated by the shepherd's guidance. Whether crossing a puddle-filled hallway, walking past towering adults who smiled but spoke too loudly, or cautiously observing other children, the dog was his constant anchor. The woman encouraged him gently, speaking softly and consistently reinforcing the lessons of safety, courage, and patience. As evening approached, the boy sat with the dog outside the center, watching the sun dip below the horizon, casting the world in shades of orange and gold. The wind had died down, the rain had ceased, and for the first time in many years, the boy allowed himself to breathe freely, unencumbered by fear. The dog rested his head on the boy's lap, and in that moment, the child realized something profound. The dog had been waiting all these years, not just to protect, but to teach him that trust and loyalty could overcome even the deepest scars. Nightfall arrived slowly, bringing with it a quiet that contrasted sharply with the chaos of the storm. The community center, once a flurry of activity, now hummed softly with the sounds of murmured conversations, the clink of dishes, and the occasional whimper of a frightened child. The boy, now calmer, sat cross-legged on a thin blanket with the dog curled beside him like a dark, protective shadow. The woman remained nearby, sorting through donations, her eyes occasionally drifting toward the boy and the dog, silently marveling at the unwavering bond that had grown between them in just a single day. The boy's fingers absently traced the dog's fur, feeling the familiar texture of the thick coat. Each stroke seemed to anchor him to the present, a tactile reassurance that he was safe, that he had a companion who would never abandon him. He whispered softly, "You stayed, you waited all this time." The dog's amber eyes met his, glowing faintly in the dim light, as if acknowledging every word, every thought. The boy's chest tightened with emotion, a mixture of gratitude, awe, and a quiet sadness for the years lost in fear and isolation. Outside, the aftermath of the storm had left a stark reminder of fragility. Power lines sagged dangerously, roofs were partially torn away, and debris littered streets that would take days to clear. Yet despite the destruction, the sense of community was palpable. Neighbors who had never spoken now checked on each other, exchanging small acts of kindness, a shared cup of water, a blanket, a comforting word. The boy watched, wide-eyed, realizing that the world beyond his immediate fear could hold generosity, warmth, and safety. The woman approached the boy with a gentle smile, kneeling beside him. "Do you want to help us hand out supplies tomorrow?" she asked softly. The boy hesitated, uncertainty flickering across his face. The thought of stepping further into this new, overwhelming world was intimidating, but the dog nudged him forward, his nose against the boy's hand, a silent prompt, "Trust, take the next step." I think I can," the boy whispered, a tentative hope coloring his words. The woman nodded approvingly, her heart swelling at the subtle yet profound progress. "One step at a time," she said. "We'll do it together." The dog's tail thumped gently against the blanket, a quiet confirmation of their shared journey. The evening continued in this rhythm, a careful blend of stillness and small victories. Volunteers offered the boy small tasks, sorting canned goods, folding blankets, and handing out water bottles. Each completed task brought a flicker of pride and a growing sense of competence. The dog remained his silent partner, always by his side, ensuring the boy never felt alone or overwhelmed. By late night, the community center quieted further. Families found makeshift sleeping arrangements, children huddled in corners with donated blankets, and the soft glow of lanterns cast long shadows across the room. The boy, now tired but content, lay down beside the dog on their blanket. The dog shifted to ensure he was comfortable, his warmth a tangible comfort in the unfamiliar environment. The woman checked on them one last time before retiring to a nearby cot. She paused, looking at the pair, and whispered under her breath, "You've come so far, and he's come for you too." The boy, half asleep, murmured into the dog's fur, "I think I can face tomorrow." The dog's steady breathing matched his own, a calming rhythm that anchored him to safety and courage. Outside, the moon rose high, its silver light reflecting off puddles and broken glass, painting the world in ethereal hues. It was quiet now, save for the distant drip of water from the damaged roof. Yet even in this calm, the boy could feel the lingering echoes of fear, the remnants of years spent in anxiety and hiding. But the dog's presence muted those echoes, transforming them into a background hum, a distant memory that had little power over the present. In the early hours before dawn, the boy dreamed of open fields and safe havens, of the dog guiding him through forests and across rivers, of laughter, warmth, and companionship. He awoke occasionally, only to find the dog faithfully watching over him, eyes alert, ready to protect against any imagined threat. And with each awakening, the boy's courage grew, strengthened by the tangible proof of loyalty, love, and resilience. By the time the first light of morning peeked through the center's windows, the boy had slept longer than he had in years. He rose slowly, his small hands brushing against the dog's fur, a silent gesture of thanks. Today, he thought, would be another step forward, another chance to embrace the world beyond fear, guided by a companion who had waited, without complaint, for years. The storm had torn apart the world he knew, but it had also revealed the unbreakable threads of trust, hope, and guardianship that now bound him to the dog, and through the dog, to the possibility of life beyond isolation. The next morning, the community center was alive with activity once again. The storm had passed fully, leaving behind a landscape transformed, not just physically, but emotionally. Families emerged from their temporary shelters, children laughing hesitantly as they navigated puddles and fallen branches. The boy followed the woman and the dog outside, each step forward a declaration that he was reclaiming the world that fear had once kept him from. The dog led the way, his keen senses alert to any hazards hidden in the debris. Amber eyes scanned every corner, every shadow, ensuring that nothing could catch the boy off guard. With each careful movement, the boy gained confidence, mimicking the dog's deliberate pace and learning, slowly but surely, to trust his own instincts. His small hand clutched the woman's tightly whenever uncertainty arose, yet the dog's steady presence reminded him that courage was not the absence of fear, it was moving forward despite it. Volunteers welcomed them with smiles, offering fresh blankets, hot drinks, and gentle words of encouragement. The boy began to assist in small ways, carrying light boxes, handing out food, and helping younger children navigate puddles. Every interaction, every shared smile, chipped away at the years of isolation that had shaped his existence. And through it all, the dog remained a constant sentinel, positioning himself between the boy and any potential threat, a silent declaration that he would not leave, no matter what. By late morning, word spread of the boy's courage and the dog's unwavering loyalty. Neighbors who had once glanced away now approached, offering warm greetings and expressions of admiration. "He's incredible," one mother whispered, watching the dog nuzzle the boy protectively. "And you," she added softly to the boy, "you've come so far." The boy's cheeks flushed with a mixture of pride and embarrassment, but he didn't look away. For the first time, he understood that bravery could be seen, and that acknowledgement could heal old wounds. The woman guided the boy to a small garden that had survived the storm relatively intact. Flowers, though bent and broken, still clung to the earth, vibrant against the gray aftermath. She knelt beside him, pointing out the small signs of resilience, a stubborn daisy pushing through the mud, a vine clinging to a fence. "See," she said gently, "life finds a way, even after destruction. You're like this too, you've survived, and now you grow." The boy's gaze shifted to the dog, whose head rested on his lap, ears twitching at every sound. The bond was unmistakable. Together, they had endured, and together, they would continue to face whatever came next. Suddenly, a familiar voice called out across the garden. "I saw you yesterday. Thank you for helping us." Another neighbor joined, carrying blankets and water. Soon, a small group had gathered, sharing stories of the night, of rescue, and of the bravery that had united them. The boy listened, wide-eyed, absorbing the sense of community that had seemed impossible before. He realized that the storm, terrifying as it had been, had not only tested them but had also created an opportunity for connection, trust, and healing. The dog remained at his side, alert yet relaxed, sensing the boy's growing comfort. The boy's hands reached up to stroke the familiar fur, whispering quietly, "We made it, together." The dog's tail thumped once, a subtle but profound acknowledgement of shared triumph. In that moment, the boy understood something deeper. The dog's loyalty was not just protection, it was a guide through fear, a companion in courage, and a bridge to a world he had longed to engage with but had been too afraid to approach. As the afternoon sun climbed higher, the boy helped distribute food and blankets, laughing as children ran past, eager to play despite the lingering puddles and fallen debris. The woman watched, a quiet pride swelling within her, seeing not just a boy who had survived but a child learning to thrive. The dog moved among them, a sentinel and friend, occasionally barking softly to corral the younger children, ensuring everyone's safety. By evening, the community center quieted once more. Families returned to temporary shelters, the volunteers organized their supplies, and the boy found himself sitting on the steps outside, the dog lying beside him. The woman joined them, her eyes scanning the horizon, reflecting on the journey of the past 48 hours. "You've done so much today," she said gently, resting a hand on the boy's shoulder. "Do you see how strong you've become?" The boy nodded slowly, understanding now that strength was not measured by size or loudness but by resilience, trust, and the courage to keep moving forward. The dog lifted his head, amber eyes meeting the boy's, conveying a silent but undeniable truth: no matter the challenges ahead, they would face them together. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange, pink, and purple, the boy leaned against the dog, who remained steadfast and vigilant. He whispered, barely audible, "Thank you for waiting, for never leaving." The dog nudged him gently, a simple gesture, yet one that carried the weight of years of loyalty and devotion. The storm had passed, leaving behind broken fences, fallen trees, and displaced families, but it had also revealed the unbreakable bond between a child and his protector. They had weathered the chaos, navigated fear, and emerged stronger, more connected to each other and the world around them. And as night fell over the recovering neighborhood, the boy and the dog sat together, two souls who had endured, survived, and discovered the profound power of loyalty, courage, and hope. The future remained uncertain, but one truth was clear: they would face it side by side, and neither would ever leave the other behind.